Americans thought that this was the right path, that we were really doing the right thing here between the Spanish-American War at the end of the 1900s, William McKinley with the open door policy in China, changing the way America gained access to those markets. People think that America's on the right path. A lot of people do anyway when it comes to foreign policy. What would have been, we can't really tell because McKinley gets shot. He was initially president from 1896 to 1900. He was reelected in 1900 for a second four-year term. And he comes out of that second four-year term, and he's actually going to be assassinated, I should say, by a guy named Leon Solgas. And here's what happens. McKinley is up in northern New York. He's at a festival up there. He's out shaking hands. He's meeting people, greeting people. And this guy, Solgas, he's an anarchist. He doesn't believe in government. He thinks that people like McKinley are the reason why immigrants are oppressed. So he shoots McKinley, and McKinley dies. And he's replaced by this guy who's his vice president, a guy named Teddy Roosevelt. And Roosevelt, as president, I think it's pretty safe to say that he's going to conclude, or I should say rather continue, McKinley's policies as president, at least when it comes to foreign policy, because if there's one thing you need to remember about Teddy Roosevelt, it's that he is big on strength. The stronger your muscles, the bigger your guns, the more you can get done. I want you to think of Teddy Roosevelt over this next slide or two, that everything he does here is within the context of displaying American power. His goal is to show the world that we are strong and that we are the moral compass of the world. He wants to influence less civilized societies. In essence, what Teddy Roosevelt is essentially going to do here is turn America into the world's police force. He views America within that lens, that we have a responsibility to get done what is best for our country, but at the same time to do what's best for democracy. Manifest destiny on crack, because now we have a huge empire, we have access to huge markets, and we're very, very strong. So let me give you an example of how he does this. War is going to break out in the early 1900s, around 1904, 1905. It's going to break out between Russia and Japan. They had been competing for some time over China. And those nations were definitely interested in seeing more and more influence in that part of the world. So when this war breaks out, it's not very good, not going very good at all for the Russians, but that's besides the point, because Teddy Roosevelt looks at this and says, this is not how the modern powers of the world should function. We just spent all this time working up the open door policy, giving equal access to China, and now two of the parties involved in that we didn't want to go to war are fighting a war. It's not going to work. So what Roosevelt does as the world's police force is he displays American strength by sitting these two parties down in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and he says, you know what we're going to do? We're going to sign a treaty. There's no one that's going to control trade. Russia and Japan, you will agree to peace. There will be no fighting over China. There will be no spheres of influence. We had them. Open door under McKinley gets rid of them. You can't bring them back. And it's going to work. This is a great example of Roosevelt using American military and political and economic might to force countries to do his bidding in a place like China. Another way you can look at Roosevelt in terms of strength and displaying American strength is with the Panama Canal. This is a canal that the French had been building through Panama, or trying to build, for about 10 years. They had a couple of goals here. Prior to this, if you had to ship any goods around the world, you ended up having to go a really, really, really long way. You would have to go, so for example, let's draw a little, there's a little Latin America, and there's Mexico, and here's the United States, okay? Now, if you wanted to ship goods around the world, let's say from New York, what you ended up having to do here was ship them all the way down and around and then off to wherever it is you wanted to go. The Panama Canal is going to come along and say, you know what, you don't have to do that. You can just go like this. Oh, yeah, that's pretty awesome. At least in the idea of displaying power, right? Because it's easy to cut costs for the businesses of America that are shipping goods all over the world. And it's also a way to show our military might, because now we can move our Navy to either side of the world incredibly quickly, and we can display our strengths without people having, or without us having to worry about who's in control and who's doing that work. So Roosevelt comes in here, and he wants to take over this construction of the Panama Canal, and he wants to overcome things that had never been overcome, like the disease that killed thousands of Frenchmen and Panamanians who'd been working there, so and create a project that is gargantuan. You see this little dot right down here? That's a person. So we're talking about a huge canal being built here. And Roosevelt himself actually says, you know what, we can do this. No one has to be worried about how we're going to handle this because I'm going down there myself and I'm going to take care of it. That's Roosevelt working a crane in the Panama Canal. He's brilliant, and he demands that America build this canal, and they create whole new ways of handling diseases, whole new ways of creating healthy working conditions and surviving in jungle environments, and building this canal and then controlling it. The Americans controlled this canal in somebody else's country. If you wanted to go through the canal, you had to play by our rules and be our friend. This is a really important strategic piece of work that's done by Americans, and it really is a great way of Teddy Roosevelt saying, if you want to play nice and use our canal, be kind to the police, all right? Be kind to America.